and I want to talk to you about a new paper on creating value through governance. In February 2014, ACCA launched a consultation paper on corporate governance and how it does or should help companies to create value. This is the third in a series of papers that began in 2008 with corporate governance and a credit crunch. This paper was launched a few days after the Lehman Brothers Bank filed for bankruptcy, although we started writing it 6 months earlier. It took a systems view of what caused the credit crunch and tried to explain it in an unbiased way in layman's language. It was one of the first attempts to do this and went down well with readers. The people factor played an important role in the credit crunch, and in 2010 we published Risk and Reward, Tempering the Pursuit of Profit. This discussed many of the people issues, such as what influences our behaviour, why people game regulation, and why cognitive biases mean that we, as individuals and in groups, often make poor decisions. We also discussed why these considerations made conventional approaches to risk management somewhat problematic. Our latest paper, Creating Value Through Governance Towards a New Accountability, builds on the first two themes, but goes much wider in its scope. Adrian Berendt, who chairs our Global Governance Risk and Performance Forum, and I wrote the paper. We also wrote Corporate Governance and a Credit Crunch. When I use the word we in this presentation, I mean Adrian and me. Some parts of what it says are controversial, and we do not claim to have got everything right, and this is why we're publishing the paper as a consultation. We believe that there is a vital reason why we need there to be good governance of companies, and that reason is to ensure that companies create value. By value, we don't just mean profit or even economic value. We mean value in a wider sense that contributes to society in some way, and this could be economically, socially, or environmentally. This means that good governance is essential to economic well-being and to our own well-being and that of the planet. We look at what causes economic growth and at the nature of money and debt. We look at how companies create value and find that some activities, which may be very profitable, do not actually create value so much as extract or transfer value from somewhere else. The financial crisis provides considerable evidence that governance is not doing a very good job in ensuring companies create value, and we ask why. We propose an accountability framework based on performing, informing and holding to account, which can be used to assess and to improve governance. We hope that the paper will stimulate debate, which in turn will lead to better governance, that leads to companies creating more value, in this wider sense for the good of all of us. We hope this presentation will make you want to read it, and let us know what you think. The consultation is open until 31st of August. We begin with what we should learn from the financial crisis. We propose our hypotheses of the problem and introduce a new framework based on accountability. We will discuss what performance is and how we can assess a company's performance and the contribution to it by management and the board. We think the measures used at present are less than ideal. We will discuss how we can better consider, assess and measure performance and how people could and should be held to account for that performance. We will briefly consider some everyday terms that we find poorly understood, such as value, profit, economic and public wealth. Let's start from what we should learn from the financial crisis. There is a great deal, but from a governance perspective, perhaps the key learning is that what many thought was good governance and good risk management was proven by events to be anything but good. HBOS is, or was, one of the big British banks that failed in 2008-2009. Last year, a UK Parliamentary Commission published an inquiry into what had gone wrong. The conclusion was that the failure was no chance accident, but an accident waiting to happen. I quote from the overall conclusions. The massive impairments, that is losses, in HBOS were not confined to a single division. In the case of the corporate division, the impairments of £25 billion on their own would have threatened the ability of the bank to operate or require complete recapitalisation. The impairments in the international division of 15 billion, although smaller than the corporate division, were larger as a proportion of the loan book. They too would have been sufficient on their own to necessitate substantial recapitalisation. The losses in the Treasury division of 7 billion would also have been sufficient on their own to require recapitalisation. Both the scale of such losses and the fact that they were incurred in 3 separate divisions suggests a systemic management failure across the organisation. In other words, the report says that the losses in any one of the 3 main divisions would have necessitated a recapitalisation and threatened the ability of the bank to operate. The inquiry referred to systemic management failure, yet curiously, those on the board, even after the bank failed, thought the board was doing a good job. One senior and experienced non-executive director told the inquiry it was the best board he'd ever served on. Now, the word governance comes from the ancient Greek word for to steer. In summing up, the Parliamentary Commission said, "We are shocked and surprised that even after the ship has run aground, so many of those who are on the bridge still seem so keen to congratulate themselves on their collective navigational skills." Hence the reference to the ship in the slide. So the board thought that its governance was good. Similarly, the first inquiry by a regulator into the failure of Royal Bank of Scotland did not see its governance as a problem. And in the USA, both the SEC and rating agencies thought that Lehman's risk management was best in class. There were no governance or risk management warning bells ringing. What this is telling us is that companies that were thought of as having good governance and good risk management turned out to have neither. Something is wrong. Although there has been growing interest in corporate governance over the last 25